Would you like to be somebody who knows why you can't see God, or why modern people generally in Western civilizations cannot see God? Then listen to this entire video where I explain what is blocking humans from being open enough to give God a try, and why people aren't educating themselves with the right content that would enable them to get this benefit from understanding the concept of God itself. So before we get into this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you'd like to learn more about self-development, dating, Jungian psychology, and how to reduce suffering in life. Let's get into it. So recently, I would say in the last few months, I've been making large steps in my development of understanding the concept of God itself. I've been reading Carl Jung, I've been reading Dostoevsky, and I've been watching Jordan Peterson lectures, which have really been catalysts for my understanding of the concept of God. Now, when I mention, when I'm talking to friends and we're discussing, we're catching up, and they ask me what I've been doing, what I've been up to, and I say, yeah, I've been developing my understanding of God, it kind of bounces off them. They don't really get what I mean. And I think the vast majority of adolescents nowadays don't get what God is as a concept. And now, to make this relevant to you, like, why would I even care if I can't see God? I want to shortly mention how my growing understanding of the concept has benefited me and hence could benefit you. So in short, understanding or developing my understanding of the divine, or what is God, or the concept of it, has helped me put on these lenses that enables me to see meaning in life. Like there's some meaning in life, and there's something valuable which can be found if you follow this track of educating yourself on the concept of God, and that's really exciting. It gets me buzzing like a kid, for real. But I mean, I'm not naive. Like, I'm understanding it from a logical, scientific mindset, what the concept is, and also trying to listen to my body and my emotions and feelings. So I'm not naive. I'm not throwing myself into dogma or anything like that. I would say I'm also more conscious of my behavior. I try to behave more nobly. My moral compass is switched on and active. Thus, I would say I'm able to benefit from the consequences of my calm, generous mindset and the way I communicate with people. And finally, now I would say I definitely respect people more, because I see the intrinsic value that is encompassed by every single human, which makes them quite fascinating. And just thinking about the potential that these people have when you're engaging with them, and all this knowledge and also darkness that lies within them is really fascinating. Hence, they should be nurtured and respected. Now, I will explain more of the benefits in detail in another video, because this video is really dedicated to why people can't see God. So here is why I think modern people don't see God nor understand it, and therefore prevent themselves from getting access to the meaningful benefits that I just described. So one key reason revolves obviously around the devaluation of Christianity in the West, which was sort of a consequence of the scientific revolution, which I believe started in sort of I think it was the 15 or 1600s. Because in short, what happened is, I believe Catholicism began to value truth above everything else, and of course Christianity, or the church, promotes dogma which cannot be substantiated with any scientific claims. Hence, Christianity was devalued. And I made a video already explaining this, what happened, or why people can't see God, previously, which really went into this topic of the devaluation of Christianity, which I'll put in the description if you want to check that out. Okay, so in order to let's get to the point of it now. In order to understand God, you need a kind of openness. You need to be open to understanding the idea itself, because it has such stigma attached to it, because the likelihood that you judge the concept of God as something fake, dangerous, dogmatic, or stupid is quite high, especially for modern day adolescents. That is really the first step that is preventing you from seeing God. And when I use the word seeing God, I mean just generally understanding the concept of God, I would say. But it's far more complex than that, because God is also something you feel and sort of encompasses your whole life. your whole being. Now, the symptom of being judgmental of God, of the concept and its stigma, I think is rooted in a far deeper problem. Why are we so judgmental of it? Obviously, if everybody else around us judges God as something that only naive people believe in, sure, I understand why. And the stories you hear about the scandals creeping out of the Catholic Church don't help Christianity's reputation in terms of like the child abuse stories. So we are indoctrinated to think that God is whack. But the reason a lot of individuals never give God a try is because they are rigid. So I would say a mix of the stigma and being arrogant about one's belief system sets a concrete foundation among that has a tenacious grip on people's ankles and prevents them from taking a step forward and trying out new ways of life or beliefs about how the world actually works. And I think the hubris about science and logic contributes to this rigidity, because it's quite a convincing argument to say, well, if we can't measure God and prove his existence, why should I be so naive and take a leap of faith towards it, I understand that. Sure, but actually, if you're a true scientist who dedicates their life to trying to grasp the nature of reality, because I think that is the aim of science to expand our collective understanding of how reality works, if you're dedicated to that, then you will admit that our scientific discoveries are still very immature. The vast majority of reality and human nature we don't understand. And if you generally want to update our map of reality, then you have to humbly admit that we need to be open to different methods of living life to really see how humans function and what effects these methods have on us instead of just shutting them down. It's this arrogance that you understand society, human nature, and reality that prevents you from growing and maturing in your perspectives and the conceptions of life. There's the quote, pride comes before the fall, and I think being too rigid and proud and arrogant about your belief system is let's say, the spark that will ignite the explosion, or figuratively speaking, of your life. So, whilst this humility that you know very little, it makes you very open and enables you to build wisdom, I say. As Socrates said, I know that I know nothing, something along the lines of that. And this humility is actually wisdom itself. Life is way too complex to box it in and say we know it all. Thus, if you grasp the truth that you can start getting, that life is just far too complex, then you can actually start getting wisdom. I would say that is probably the first step towards wisdom in general. So, I would say this, it's obviously the arrogance about science and just modern day people that, they understand the world, and, people generally are I would say have egos, psychological complexes, and they build up these egos to protect their insecurities and their emotional wounds. And along with this ego comes a belief system that that you identify with. And because the human is quite wounded deep within and is quite fearful, this protection, this layer of protection, this protection mechanism, the shield, is very robust and rigid. So it's difficult to let go of that and be open, I think, in general. So let me think for a second. Sorry, I'm having a blackout currently. I wanted to say something more. So the arrogance of scientific modern day people. And they're very judgmental also of one another. Oh yes, and what it is, they don't take the phenomenon of the Bible and Christianity and the concept of God seriously. People don't understand that the Bible has outlived empires, castles. I mean, it seems to have outlived any other human creation, or let's say, if it was a human creation, probably was, but outlived any other human creation and has existed for 2,000 years and is so complex. I mean, I would say Christianity, or the concept of God and what the Bible discusses, is an abstraction of human nature and reality. It's an attempt to describe what humans are like. And of course, as I said, life is extremely complex. So the probability that these people who wrote the Bible knew accurately, 100% accurately, what life is about is low. But they had a relatively good understanding, because I would say it's like the Bible's like a collation of stories that were developed over thousands of, like, vast expanses of time, and they encapsulate serious wisdom. And people nowadays they're never taught that, like, the significance or the phenomenon, how significant the phenomenon of the Bible is. And because if they would understand it, it would incline them perhaps more to give it a try, or like try and see what the wisdom is inside of it, instead of just like completely disregarding it. Yeah. And finally, I would say a reason why people don't see God is because, it's kind of what I was just indicating, they don't educate themselves on the necessary literature and readings in order to grasp the concept in a way that resonates with their modern day scientific, logical, skeptical thinking mind. If you read the Bible, it's quite sort of, some of it's vague or complicated or confusing, and it has old language that is the modern person doesn't grasp. But if you listen to books, more modern books, and watch videos, like I highly recommend Jordan Peterson's descriptions or lectures on God on the biblical series, because he uses modern day language for you to grasp it. And I think a reason why people aren't educated is because the church or religious believers themselves use language that does not resonate and cannot be comprehended really by modern day people. Hence, it is the value or the potency of the Bible is not transmitted to modern day people. But you need to educate yourself on the right books. So I would say reading Carl Jung, Dostoevsky, and reading Jordan Peterson's books, or watching his lectures, that's really necessary. And watch how it affects you whilst you're reading them. Like, especially Dostoevsky. I'm currently reading The Brothers Karamazov, and I cannot tell you how it shifts your psyche whilst you're reading it. It wraps you up in the story and grows on you. The characters grow on you, and it's like you're part of the story, not necessarily taking part in it, but you're there. And it is having an emotional effect on you. And Jordan Peterson says the books by Dostoevsky are psychologically correct. That's why they're so potent. But really, whilst you're reading it, you feel like you're part of the story, and it really grips you. It's hard to explain it. I just really recommend trying it out yourself. So in conclusion, modern people especially cannot see God because they stigmatize it, if that's a verb. They judge it negatively, and of course the reputation around the church doesn't help, enabling people to be open towards the idea of understanding God. And also, I would say the scientific attitudes of people make them arrogant, and people have egos which prevent them from being fluid and open to new ideas, because they want to protect their belief system, which shields their wounds, I would say, their trauma, something like that. And finally, you need to educate yourself with the right books and teachings that communicate in a way that resonates with your modern day scientific, logical thinking mind. And that's, I would say, will also enable you to maintain a skeptical mindset without being naive or anything like that, and really understand and get access to the benefits of understanding the concept of God. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Please leave a comment below whether you think there are any other reasons that I missed which can explain why modern people can't see God, or whether you disagree with any of my points. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you'd like to learn more about self-development, dating, Jungian psychology, and how to reduce suffering in life. Thank you for listening.